There seemed to be two main horror movements in the 1970s. The torture porn genre, which stemmed from films like Last House on the Left and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and the supernatural possession genre, the big example being The Exorcist. The Omen is an example of the latter, and it has that same slow pace, that familiar, creepy fall vibe, as if it too were a William Friedkin film. It starts in a hospital where the protagonist, an expecting father played by Gregory Peck, finds out that his son has died in childbirth without his wife knowing about it. A priest suggests that Robert adopt, but the wife sincerely wants a biological child, so the priest brings up an ultimatum. As luck would have it, another woman in the delivery ward died in childbirth, leaving behind her newborn son. The priest suggests that Robert adopt the boy as his own and just not let his wife know about it. What kind of moral code does this born-again Christian follow? Notice that the film opens on June 6th at 6 a.m. That's important later. Robert, a politician, and his wife raise the child and call him Damien. Everything's all cheerful, there are no signs that the kid is possessed by the devil, and then on his 5th birthday, stuff gets real. Catherine, the overprotective mother that she is, takes her son from the nanny. Within minutes, the nanny is calling out to Damien on the roof of his home right before she hangs herself in front of the kiddies. Before long, a new nanny comes to try her hand at pampering Damien, and while she's no Nurse Ratched, she goes from 0 to bitch in like 2 scenes. She seems sweet, but then right off the bat begins defying the parents, and even invites a ravenous dog into the home against their wishes. And they don't fire her. It's around this time that we start to see changes in Damien. During a trip to the zoo, all the animals freak out when he approaches, and they get attacked by baboons. Damien also flips out when going anywhere near a church. I wonder what'll happen if you feed him after midnight. Then there's the crazy priest, the you're doomed guy, who approaches Robert and tells him all this cryptic stuff about his son. What's with these guys scaring off the people they're trying to help? You're familiar with Crazy Ralph, right? The you're doomed guy from Friday the 13th? Yeah, that whole situation could have probably been avoided if he just said to Annie, you know what? A bunch of really bad things happened at that camp. It's probably best if you just sit this one out. Instead, he goes, you're doomed, and it's got a death curse. Same thing here. The priest could come in and say, hey, I did a little research and I know the history of your son. Just watch your ass for a while and keep your eyes open for anything strange, like baboons trying to hump your wife's car. But no, he actually tells Robert that in order to survive, he needs to drink the blood of Christ along with all this other religious nonsense. Can you blame Robert for kicking him out of his office? In the meantime, there's a journalist following Robert around, photographing him whenever he gets the chance. It's David Warner, by the way, one of many British actors who seems to be in everything. He's got quite the range, doesn't he? Going from this, to My Best Friend is a Vampire, to Ninja Turtles 2, to Titanic. Getting sidetracked here. So the journalist analyzes the photographs and notices that marks appear right before a particular death occurs, as if they forecast how you're going to die. Realizing he doesn't have much time left, he goes to meet up with Robert, where together they try to figure out whose son Damien really is. Back on the home front, it turns out that Catherine's pregnant when Damien knocks her off the balcony, causing her to lose the baby, fulfilling one of Father Nutjob's premonitions. At the hospital, right as Robert warns Catherine to leave the country, the nanny from hell pushes her from a window, killing her. Looks like Father Nutjob was right on the money in the first place. Ultimately, Robert is told that he has to kill Damien to stop the devil from destroying humankind. The final act is pretty suspenseful, as Robert goes back to his house and has to deal with the triple threat. A dog that's been lurking around since the beginning of the film, Nanny Firecrotch, and then finally the whiny Damien himself, who doesn't seem to pose much of a threat. It's amazing how many horror movies borrowed from this film. Paranormal Activity, Final Destination, The Shining, Wes Craven's New Nightmare, even South Park heavily referenced it. Is it scary? Well, like comedy, horror is really subjective. To me, it's more about the atmosphere. The set pieces are good, but there are also things I've seen before. A church, a cemetery, an abandoned house that is way too big for a family of 3. For once, I'd like to see a suburban family get attacked in a quaint little ranch home. It's always these rich bastards who have all the fun. You can't talk about this film without mentioning Jerry Goldsmith's haunting score, which is one of the reasons why it's as effective as it is. Even that was mimicked in South Park. Dominus. The biggest problem for me, and why I didn't necessarily find it scary, was that Damien doesn't do anything all that supernatural. It's clear that he's on a path of evil, but aside from ramming his bike into his mother, all he really does is cry and whine. The dogs and the nanny are the real threats, and yet they're never the focus. Although the scene at the graveyard where Peck and Warner are attacked by dogs is pretty intense. I'd recommend this if you're really into psychological thrillers and you thought The Exorcist was the scariest movie ever made. Hey, some people do. But if movies about possession, ghosts, and demonic superpowers don't do it for you, then you'll probably want to skip this one.